Hi everybody, it's Ezekiel. Today I want to talk about an important topic, somewhat controversial topic, but I want to talk about why people are having less sex. So this decline in sex, or sexual reported sexual frequency, it's been talked a lot about in the media, um, on social media, and a lot of different things are getting blamed for it. So things like social media use, the amount of pornography that people are watching, um, just people leading busy lives, people playing too much video games, watching too much television. All these different factors are getting blamed. Now, I don't think these factors are completely unimportant. I think social media, particularly the likes of Instagram, is important in this. I think pornography is a lot less of an influence than on the decline of sexual frequency than people might think it is. But this is a decline that's been going on for a while now. It's not really just in the last 10 years that there's been this decline in reported sexual frequency. It's really been in the last like 2 to 3 decades that there's been a substantial decline. Um, Now this decline has been seen across all age groups. It's been seen across the 18 to 35 age group who are living together, like couples in the 18 to 35 age group who are living together, um, those who are married with kids, those who are middle aged, um, those who are elderly as well. So one factor that you don't really hear being discussed that much in this debate are just rising levels of overweight and obesity in Western countries, in developed countries, and right around the world. Now, it is my opinion that rising levels of overweight and obesity are the biggest factor in the decline in reported sexual frequency. And I'll go into depth later on in the video. Okay, so two things that I want to get out of the way before I continue. The first is that most sex happens within romantic relationships. Now, I looked at a few different studies on this, and it's very hard to measure the percentage of sex that happens within romantic relationships. But a few studies said around 80 to 90%. Okay. So then the second thing that I want to mention is that women within these relationships are basically the gatekeepers of sex. So if the man wants to have sex 10 times a week and the woman only wants to have sex once, then they're only going to have sex once per week. If the man wants to have sex 50 times a week and the woman only wants to have sex once, then they're only going to have sex once. Okay, so that's why I think mainly male use of like pornography is somewhat irrelevant because, again, the man can be watching pornography all day, every day. And if the woman only wants to have sex once per week, then he's only going to have sex once per week. Um, so now just moving on to social media and particularly women's use of social media. So there have been a number of studies that have shown that women who use social media and use social media a lot um, can end up having experiencing feelings of kind of low self-worth, like poor body image, more kind of depressive symptoms, and even like eating disorder symptoms. So why would this be the case? So in the studies, they said that it's very much about women kind of looking at pictures of other women, particularly very good-looking women, and then seeing those women as basically competitors, like competitors for male investment, for a boyfriend, for a husband, and when a woman kind of sees all these pictures of women who are more attractive than her, it makes her feel like, how am I ever going to be able to get a boyfriend, if I have to compete with these women, or how am I ever going to get a husband, if I have to compete with these women? And that can induce feelings of low self worth, of poor body image, and even induce kind of like dieting type behavior. And some women will end up developing eating disorders, which is just a very extreme form of kind of dieting behavior, in some cases anyway. Um, so basically, women that like have poor body image are much less likely to want sex, more likely to refuse sex. They're more likely to, when they do have sex, to not enjoy it as much. So if you don't enjoy something, regardless of whatever that is, you'll tend to do it a lot less. So women that have this kind of poor body image will want to have sex less often, and because women are, the gatekeepers to sex, if women are basically enjoying sex less because of poor body image, then the overall reported sexual frequency will also decline. Now, I also think that women viewing pornography can also induce similar, uh, kind of low self esteem and like poor body image, as well as social media. Okay, so now let's talk about why obesity has such a negative effect on someone's sex life. So, as you know, obesity in most Western countries has been increasing rapidly since the 1970s, not just in Western countries, but right around the world. So, in the US, in the 1970s, it was about 15%. In the year 2000, it was about 30%. And today, in 2024, it's about 43%. So, huge increase. Okay, so one study that I found, it talked about obesity in the US, but specifically among the 18 to 25 age group, so young adults. And the study went from 1976 all the way up to 2018. And what it found was the 18 to 25-year-olds in 1976 had an obesity rate of around 5.5%, so relatively low. And then in 2018, the obesity rate of 18 to 25-year-olds was 33%. Now, why I talk about these 18 to 25-year-olds is because at that age, it's a very important age in people's lives in terms of having sex, basically, in terms of men, meeting their first girlfriend, of women, meeting their first boyfriend, who may end up turning into a husband, or long-term partner. So very important time in a person's life, in terms of sex, in terms of sexual frequency, in terms of just sexual relationships. And to have this huge increase in obesity in that age group, is going to have like a massive knock-on effect on on sexual frequency in that age group. So people will notice that when they're sick, like let's say having the flu or something, they will notice that their libido will decline. It won't decline to zero, but it will suffer something of a decline. And this goes to anytime you're sick or anytime you have any kind of a health condition, there will be a decline in libido. And the more severe the health condition, the more severe the decline in libido. So it's the same with someone who has a chronic health condition such as obesity. There will just be, with as with any chronic health condition, a decline in libido. So one study that I found, which compared sexual functioning in obese men, obese women, the general population, and cancer survivors. And what it found was that obese men had a lower level of sexual functioning than the general population, but had a higher level of sexual functioning than cancer survivors. But with women, what I found was women actually had a lower level of obese women had a lower level of sexual function than even cancer survivors. And so that really just shows how negative being overweight can be on a woman's sex life. So how exactly is it then that obesity affect negatively affects a woman's sexual function? So first thing is just of course negative body image. Another one is depression. So very often people who are obese also suffer from depression. It's very common. Um, Another thing is that it's just more difficult to have orgasm. As a woman, women who are overweight, they struggle more with orgasm than normal BMI women. Another thing is just pain during sex. Another thing is just physical difficulties during sex. Like there's physical difficulties in a whole range of activities for obese people, but and sex is a physical activity, so there's going to be physical difficulties also. So for men, it's somewhat similar, but there's a few differences. So again, the similarities are poor body image, um, again depression, pain, being physically difficult. Another thing is just having low testosterone. So obese men will have lower testosterone than normal BMI women, but sorry, than normal BMI men. Testosterone will mean lower libido. It'll mean it'll be harder to get an erection, and it'll just take longer. The erection won't be as hard. All of those things will have a negative effect on a man's sexual functioning. Um, Another thing is it's just more difficult for an obese man to orgasm compared to a normal BMI man. Another thing is issues with like premature ejaculation. This is something that tends to affect overweight men because of basically just of adipose tissue pushing down on the pelvic floor, which means it's just harder to kind of control erections. So if sex does happen, it can last not very long, and it can just be a kind of an embarrassing sort of experience and make an obese man want to have sex less often, basically. Um, and then just in a general sense as well, um, having in a relationship one partner who is overweight and the other one who has normal BMI, that can lead to problems because, again, there's been loads of studies done on this, but people who have normal BMI basically just don't want to have sex with people who are overweight. They just find them unattractive, basically, and this can lead to like severe problems, in people's sex lives, and so there's just a list of reasons why um, obesity can just wreak havoc um, on a person's sex life. Okay, so I just want to talk about the more, the human side to this. Um, and I mean, I really view this as, just a tragic um, consequence of the obesity epidemic. And, it is having like a very negative, um, like impact on people's lives. Negative impact on their relationships, um, negative impact on their happiness, um, but just also like I mean, if this was happening to any, sexually reproducing species, that that it was observed that each generation of a sexually reproducing species was having less and less and less sex, um, there would be concern for that species. Um, there'd be concern over the fertility of that species and the longevity of it, whether this decline in sex would have a, raise the extinction risk of that species. So, yeah, I mean, this is incredibly concerning thing that's happening to us. But if you do want to know what is causing the obesity epidemic, be sure to have a look at my other two videos where I talk about the effects that antibiotics have and the effects that being born via cesarean section has. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it's been informative. Just let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one.